couldn't wear sweatshirts with brands on them. Like, what? A big thing about private school is that everyone's entitled, like everyone has money, blah blah blah. And yes, there are a lot of people that are entitled, there are a lot of people that have money, but I would say that there were entitled people at both schools. Hey guys, it's Reese and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be something I've wanted to film for so long. It's my experience going to both private and public high school. I know there's a huge debate about whether school should be free, whether you should pay for it. Probably gonna get a little controversial, but just remember these are my experiences. This is just for the schools that I went to. But yeah, I'm super excited to tell you guys all about my experience, and leave comments down below about any questions you have. Maybe I'll make like a part 2 because I feel like there's gonna be some things that I missed in this video because there's so much to talk about. If you're new here, feel free to subscribe down below. Check out my videos, hopefully you like them. We're gonna talk about the actual school, the parents, the people of course, the outfits, the drugs, the bad stuff, all of that. So grab a snack, stay tuned, and let's get started. Just to give you a little backstory, I went to SM, the private school, for 3 years. I went freshman, sophomore, and senior year. Junior year, I went to public school. The whole reasoning behind this is super complicated, but basically, my parents thought we were moving sophomore year, so they didn't enroll me for junior year at SM. We didn't end up moving, and they were like, why don't we try public school? It's a lot cheaper, like, maybe you'll like it better, blah blah blah, because I was already like in a bad place with school. I didn't like it. I was like, okay, yeah, let's try public school. And I had already met some friends from public school through my SAT class, so I was like, okay, it'll be fine. So yeah, I was like kind of open-minded to it, and they obviously didn't want to pay for school, so they're like, okay, yeah, let's send you to public school. Long story short, they hated it. They sent me back to private school, and I graduated from SM. That was basically my 4 years of high school in a nutshell. Starting with the people, obviously at private school you have to pay to attend, so people usually have more money. So the private school I went to is SM. That's what everyone who went there called it. It was a good school, like no regrets. And then for the public school, I'm just gonna say public school. People usually have more money in general when you're going to a private school, but that's not always true. Like I had friends at both schools that were really financially stable, and then some that like weren't as financially stable. A lot of my friends from SM, their parents would give them money, but then some of my friends at public school, their parents also gave them money. So it really just depended person to person, but I would say in general, the kids at private school do have more money that their parents give them. Going along with that, a lot more of my friends from SM would be able to travel. They had gone on like across the country, they had passports, they had gone to these really cool like experiences that obviously costed a lot of money. They drove like nice cars, they had expensive things, whereas not as many as my friends from public school had that. I had a lot of friends who had never been on an airplane, who didn't have a passport, that kind of thing, which is like completely fine, but that they just didn't have that. A lot of my friends at SM would complain and be like, oh, I hate SM, like my parents forced me here, I don't want to be here, blah blah blah, I want to transfer to this public high school. And that was a really common thing like freshman and sophomore year that I heard. Then eventually I think most people were like, yeah, like I love SM. I honestly didn't really care, like regardless, I liked SM, and then I also liked public school. There's just pros and cons to both of them, and I think eventually that's what people realized. Another thing that I noticed was that people at public school had later curfews, and some of them didn't even have curfews. Like a lot of people didn't even have curfews, and I don't know if this was just because it was junior year, so that's kind of the time when people have a little bit more freedom from their parents and that kind of thing, but I just noticed that literally nobody had a curfew at public school. They could come home whenever they wanted. They could just text their parents and be like, hey, like I'm staying here for the night. And I'm sure that happened at SM, but a lot of my friends at SM, at least during sophomore year, couldn't just be like, hey, I'm spending the night here, and be like, oh, I'm not coming home tonight, or not even say anything, and their parents wouldn't care. But like I said, everything just depends on friend groups and who you know and like what kind of person you are. But a lot of my friends at public school did not have to be home at a certain time. So that was just something I noticed right away. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to be home at 11 o'clock. Like you don't even have to be home. A big thing about private school is that everyone's entitled, like everyone has money, blah, blah, blah. And yes, there are a lot of people that are entitled. There are a lot of people that have money, but I would say that there were entitled people at both schools. At both private and public, there were entitled people. There were going to be entitled people everywhere. So that was one thing that really pissed me off, is that people would always just pull the entitled card on me. They'd be like, oh, you're so entitled. And I'd be like, what? Like, I literally did not like talk about money like whatsoever. And people just say that because I went to private school. So that was just a really big thing that annoyed me and that I wanted to say, is that just because you go to private school doesn't mean you're entitled, and doesn't mean that everyone there is entitled. Next thing was politics. There was just a lot more Republican people at SM. Like, people had Trump stickers on their car and that kind of thing. They would wear like MAGA hats. And at public school, there was this picture I took in the yearbook because it was such a stark contrast to what I'm used to. But yeah, also it could be because I'm from Orange County, so this used to be like a really big Republican district, I think. What's it called? I forgot. But yeah, so a lot of people were just really Republican at SM, and then really Democratic at, or majority Democratic at public school. And then another thing was ethnicity. There was just a lot more white people at SM, like majority white people. There was like some half like Asians and some Hispanic people and a couple African American kids. And then at public school, there were a lot more non-white people, like just a lot more diversity at public school. Like, there was a big Hispanic population, a big Middle Eastern population, a big Asian population, and then I would say that white people were the minority. So that was something that was really different, and I was like, why doesn't SM have this diversity? Now moving on to school. The private school had IB classes, which is International Baccalaureate, which is basically like AP, if you know what that is, but it's internationally recognized. So if you take like IB classes in London, it'll be the same as like IB classes in America. My public school just had AP and honors classes, and I took AP and honors classes there. The only big difference I would say between the difficulty is that SM had a lot more AP and honors classes than the public school did. Another thing is the strictness of the schools. Okay, this is where I have a lot to say. So let me just get situated. At SM, they were very strict on a lot of things. So we would get dress coded, we would get them in the form of detentions. And then like if you get 3 detentions, you get Saturday school. Like, you weren't allowed to be tardy. If you were tardy, you had to go to the front office and like get a slip and everything, and it would result in a detention. Whereas at public school, I could just walk in 3 minutes late, hope my teacher doesn't mark me tardy, and I would be okay. And honestly, I had like 15 tardies because I'm like always late. So the fact that they weren't super strict on me being late, I was like, oh, okay, I can be like 2 minutes late. You also could not go off campus at SM. You had to stay there from 7:30 a.m. to 2:05 p.m. And then at public school, I could go off campus for lunch, I could go off campus for break, even though we technically weren't supposed to. Like, there's no like gate that they lock you in. Whereas at SM, they have a guard at the gate, and you cannot like leave the school unless you get called out by your parent. Your parents can call you out, I think, at public school too. But once you turn 18, you can call yourself out. You can't do that at SM. Like, you have to always have a parent call you out. So many friends of mine during senior year would just have their parents call them out, and they would just get called out, and they would just leave for the day. And this happened to me too. Like, I would leave like once a week or come late once a week, and it was honestly really bad. But that's just like how most people did it. They'd be like, oh, I'm leaving early. Oh, I'm coming in late because I was tired and wanted to sleep in, so I'm having my mom like call me in. Like, that's seriously what people would say. Oh, and then another thing is that you could graduate early at public school, and you couldn't do that at SM. Even if you had all your credits at SM, you had to take classes still and be there from 7:30 a.m. to 2:05 every single day. It was so annoying. And I know a lot of kids at public school, once you have all your credits, you can leave early, or you can even graduate early, like I said. We also had this really confusing lunch schedule at SM. It was like first lunch and second lunch, and it just depended on what building you were in, versus at public school we only had 1 lunch, which makes sense. Like, why would you have 2 lunches? And another thing is we had computers at private school. We all had our own laptops, and we had to pay for them, of course. Lenovo Yogas, they're horrible. Do not get them. The only thing that's cool is that they flip so you can write on them and type on them like a regular computer. We could bring our own laptops to public school if we wanted, but nobody did. Oh, another thing is I felt like counselors at SM cared a lot more than the counselors at public school. I remember there was a couple issues with me like taking classes the next year, and the public school counselors like just didn't know me. They didn't really seem to care. Alright, so now we're gonna talk about the most interesting topic, the bad stuff. My friends from private school were the first ones to tell me about Juuls. I don't Juul or anything like that. Like, I think it's so stupid. Don't waste your money, trust me. Like, you get nothing from juuling or vaping or having any sort of nicotine device, which is interesting to me because a lot more people at public school smoked weed, and they would do it in between classes, they would do it at breaks, they would do it at lunch, they would go off campus and smoke. It was just like so prevalent. So many more kids, to an extent I had never seen before, had like weed, like, or they like had pens, like they would literally smoke in their cars at break. You could not do that at SM. One, you couldn't even go to your car at break, and two, they drug tested you at SM, which is another reason why I think so many people didn't smoke as much, because of the fact that if you got drug tested and you failed, they would put you in this like program, and you would be like, your parents would be involved, and like they would have like, I don't know if they suspended you, but like all this scary stuff would happen. I had never heard of people smoking at SM. But then at the same time, I was only a sophomore when I left SM, and when I came back senior year, a lot more people smoked, but it was more low-key because they didn't want to get drug tested. That was like a really big shock for me. I had always like known that like kids drank in high school, but I never really had heard of kids smoking before, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like these people are smoking like before class. Like, to me that was equivalent of like people getting drunk before class. It wasn't just my public school, it was the ones in the school district that would always smoke, and it was like a known thing. And I had always like known that kids like at SM would drink and stuff, even sophomore year kids drank, but it was nowhere, like nobody had smoked like that. So I was just really shocked. Back to the drug testing thing, once I graduated SM, I saw way more drugs from the SM kids. So that's not to say that, oh, like public school kids do way more drugs. And then another thing was drinking. So parents at private school were way more lenient when it came to drinking. They would let kids have parties at their houses. They would let kids have like little kickbacks in the backyard and let the kids drink. They would buy alcohol for the kids, and at public school that was not a thing whatsoever. I did not go to any parties where the parents knew that there was alcohol or drinking or anything like that. All the parents were really strict, even if they didn't have a time to come home, have a curfew, they were like, no drinking, you can't drink here. It was way more low-key. They didn't have any big parties. And then like senior year, I know that they threw like a couple like parties, but they were never as big as the ones at SM, and they didn't have the parents there. Like the parents from private school would just be upstairs like relaxing, watching TV, knowing that there's like 200 kids downstairs drinking. Another thing was hooking up. For me, like the definition of hooking up during high school was like making out and like everything like that, but like no sex. Basically there was a big hookup culture at private school. Like everyone would be like, oh yeah, we all hooked up with like the same girl. Like, oh, like it would be like, oh, I want to hook up with him. And it'd just be like, I think it goes along with the whole party culture and like having a bunch of kids being drunk in your living room and like not knowing what else to do besides make out with each other. There was just a really big stigma around hooking up at public school where there wasn't that at private school. And at private school it would always be talked about like, oh, did you hear this person hooked up with this person? And I remember like first month of like freshman year, there was this girl and she hooked up with this kid at a lighthouse or something like that, and it was like talked about for months. That was like freshman year, like literally the first month of school or something like that. At public school that wasn't like such a big thing. I think senior year it changed a little bit more once they started having more parties and more kids hooked up with each other. Another thing is every dance at SM we were breathalyzed. Every person was breathalyzed before they got into the dance, and at public school they didn't breathalyze. So a lot of kids, majority of the kids I would say, came like drunk or high. So yeah, actually I have to create story times. Let me know if you want story times about public and private school, because I have some crazy stories, but not like about me, but I have like some crazy stories about me, but like a lot about other people. But yeah, actually kids did bring drugs to prom at SM. So let me know if you want to hear about that in the comments down below. Just a lot more weed at public school and other drugs, because like you could get away with it because they weren't drug testing you. And when I told my public school friends that SM drug tests, they'd be like, oh my god, what? Like that's horrible. How would you like, why would you go to school there? Like why would you let your parents like allow that? Oh, but just at both schools, it's like sad, but nicotine like completely went through the schools and became like a really popular thing. And junior and senior year, a lot of kids got nicotine devices. They all had Juuls, they all had Sorens. There would be kids in class senior year who would need to go leave every class to go hit their Sorens in the bathroom. The light is doing a weird thing. Nicotine completely like took over kids' lives, and it still does. Don't hit people's Juuls, okay? Just don't. Like, you're just setting yourself up for like a world of pain and lots of money. Honestly, it's so expensive. Don't do it. Next is the dress code. So obviously at private school you have to wear a uniform, and at public school we could wear whatever we wanted. And some days at SM we would have free dress days, which means you could wear what you wanted, but we weren't allowed to wear like leggings by themselves. We couldn't wear like open sandals. The boys had to always shave their faces. They would always have to like have their hair neat, and if it wasn't like to the way the deans liked it, you would have to get it cut, or you'd get a detention and then have to get it cut. You couldn't have a beard or anything like that. Girls couldn't have nose piercings. Ear piercings they were a little bit more lax about, but I think in the handbook it says you're only allowed to have one piercing. But I would wear like ponytails, and I have like both of mine pierced, and I would have like other earrings in, and they wouldn't say anything. You can't have your hair like pink or like any other non-natural color. You had to wear like black, white, navy, khaki, or gray shoes. You couldn't wear anything outside of that. You couldn't wear sweatshirts with brands on them. Like, what? I couldn't wear like a Nike sweatshirt. I would get a detention for it. So we had to wear like no name brand, no visible logos sweatshirts, and then only second semester seniors could wear college sweatshirts. Nobody else. It's as if like nobody else wanted to go to college and could wear it. No, like you couldn't wear a college sweatshirt if you weren't a senior. Senior? Yeah, senior, not second semester, just senior. Which is so stupid. Like, hello, I want to go to college, I'm a sophomore, can I wear my sweatshirt? Like, I never heard of kids getting dress coded up, like ever. But of course, on the first day, I wore shorts and like a tank top. They're not deans, but we'll just call it a dean. And they like, she went up to me and she was like, you need to come with me. And I was like, okay. And she was like, your shorts are way too short. I was like, what the hell? I remember people telling me when I was going to public school, like the kids who went there, they're like, yeah, you can literally wear whatever you want. Like, you won't get dress coded. And also something random is that we couldn't dress up for Halloween at SM because something had happened like years before, and we weren't allowed to wear costumes on Halloween, which is so stupid. You could wear whatever you wanted to dances. There wasn't really a dress code for the girls at public school, whereas they were super strict on dress code at dances, especially like prom and stuff at SM. You would have to walk, all the girls would be in a line, and you would have to go in front of the dean and twirl so they could see all aspects of your dress, and they would say yes or no. And if you got like the no, like you can't come in, you would have to change, and you got a detention, and you had to pay for the dress you changed into. And the dresses came from like this rack of like ugly clothes that were like really like modest dresses, but they were honestly just so ugly. A lot of girls made a joke out of it, and they would just pick the ugliest one and like make the most out of it. But yeah, you got a detention and a dry cleaning bill to have to like clean the dress. So then I just wrote down some random things that I remembered. The fire alarm was pulled like 4 or 5 times when I was at public school. That never happened when I was at SM. But yeah, the fire department came and we all had to like march out of the school. That happened a lot. I have a Snapchat I'll put in here. The distances between your friends at public school, obviously because you guys are districted for the same school, you're gonna live within a radius of each other. But at private school, there's literally no radius, so your friends could live like 30 minutes away from you, which honestly sucks. When I was at public school, I'd just be like, hey, what are you guys doing right now? And everyone would be like, oh, I'm here, here, here. And it would all be in like a 2-mile radius, versus like at SM, when I would ask, everyone would be like 30 minutes away, 15 minutes away. So it was just like everyone lived super far. And then at private school, some girls got plastic surgery. It was not like everyone did. It was just like 2 or 3 girls. I know like one girl that got a nose job, or actually a couple girls that got a nose job. And then some girls that got lip filler and stuff like that. And did anyone get a boob job? I don't know if anyone got a boob job. But yeah, I know the girls definitely got nose jobs. I think one girl at public school got a nose job, but it was because she had like a deviated septum. So that's just something random. And then a lot of people went to like music festivals at SM because it's obviously like they cost money and stuff. But the first time I heard about a lot of girls going to Coachella and Stagecoach was from my school. So yeah, I have a video that I'll insert here. but just a lot of girls going to Stagecoach. Really, like every year since freshman year, girls would go to Stagecoach because country music was a really big thing at SM. That is pretty much everything I can think of right now that I wanted to say about private and public school. But if you guys have any questions or want me to make like a part 2 or like going through high school memories Snapchats, that would be really fun actually. I hope this was somewhat entertaining for you. I filmed so much. I think I filmed like 40 minutes worth of talking, so I have to edit that down so you guys don't get bored. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe down below, leave a comment, leave a like. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.